Hi, this is Sandy. This week we are going to celebrate Halloween, and we are going to make a pumpkin, sort of, out of an old glass jar that you might find around your house or ask your mother for. So, we're going to need a glass jar that's clean and empty. Can't have anything in it. So let's get started. Okay, we're ready to get started. I have a jar, glass jar. My glass jar actually has writing right here. So you might want to look at yours and see if yours has writing, and if it does, put it on the back. Now we're going to want to make eyes and nose and mouth out of tape. This is painter's tape, and I will show you how to work it. I have 3 colors of paint. I've got orange, yellow, and then I've got red. Then I have 2 different types of paint brushes. This is what I'm using to put the orange paint on the jar. I'm going to be using a glue gun. You can use regular glue. And then I've got some leftover ribbon from other projects that fit in the pumpkin theme. And then I've got raffia, which is another leftover from something or other. And we can use all of these things to finish it up. So let's get started. First of all, I need to make eyes, nose, and mouth out of tape. This is the painter's tape, and it is, I think it's 1 inch. Yes, it's 1 inch. So I've got to draw on here the size of my eyes. I would like my eyes and my nose to all match. That's important to me. It might not be important to you. So what I'm going to do is draw a line and draw another line. And I know that this is all about the same. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to carefully cut it. And I'm going to make a template out of it. That's something like a pattern. And we're going to use that pattern to cut the rest of them. Now I don't have my tabletop protected because it washes off with anything, so I don't have to really worry about it. But if what you're working on, I want you to make sure that you protect your tabletop. My sleeves are rolled up because this is going to be a messy project. I'm not wearing something real important, so it doesn't matter if it gets a little paint on it. I won't be heartbroken. Okay, now I'm going to take the piece that I cut out and I'm going to tape it to the top. Take my pen, I'm going to go around it. Okay. Take my tape up and I'm going to do it again. Okay, so now we know that my tape area will be this, my eyes will be this big. My mouth has to be at least this big, so when I take it off, I'm just going to put it over here and I'm going to put a line that says my mouth has to be at least that big. Carefully cut. Don't want any fingers coming off with this. Get rid of what you don't need. And try not to put your fingers on the back of this. I can put that right there. Right there. And right there. Now I've got my eyes, my nose, my mouth, and this one was just my template. I can get rid of that. So remember I said to look for that writing if your jar has writing on it, and I'm putting it this way. My jar is clean. It used to have sauerkraut in it. Now when you put your eyes down, you might want to just put it up this way, but when I did that, my eyes got crooked. I didn't want crooked eyes. So if I'm laying it down like this, I can see a little bit better. There we go. Push it down real good. Try not to take it up too many times because we need this tape to stick. So even if you make a little bit of a mistake and one eye is a little bit higher than the other, it's okay. So now we know our mouth is going to go from at least here to here, and we drew that on our piece of paper. Now we've got to make shape, give it a little bit of shape. So I'm just kind of cutting off the edges here, and then I'm going to give him a little bit of a smile. Not very much. And he's going to have one big tooth right there that I'm going to cut out. Okay. So let's start. Remember, I've got to be real careful. I don't want any fingers cut. Now to get that tooth out of there. Okay, I've got it done. So let's put it on our jar. It's easiest if you start from the middle, lay it down, and then take your fingers and spread it out. Okay, so how did I get the jar clean? Well, like I said, mine had sauerkraut in it. It was messy. You had to wash it with soap and water, dish soap and water. And then you have to dry it real good. This can't be wet at all when we're working on it. Okay, now I've got my paint, and I'm going to put some in my holder. This is just a paper plate. Now, I'm going to caution you, I don't know the size of your jar, but if you stick your hand in the jar and you make a fist, it's not going to come out on my side. I want you to make sure that you can get your hand comfortably in it to hold it. I don't want any hands getting stuck in your jar. Okay, I've got paint on my brush, and I'm just going to paint over everything. I'm going to give it a light coat of paint. I know that it doesn't cover real well, so we're going to have to give it 2 coats before we start our decorating it. So it's going to take a while to dry. I'm going to paint all the way around. Now you might have a hard time getting the tag off of your jar. What happens when you go to move the jar, that hand will get stuck. And then you get the paint on your fingers. Try not to get the paint on your fingers. In order to make colors, a lot of times they use chemicals. We don't want chemicals in our body if we can help it. Just because they touch us, some of them can get in our body. Okay. I'm also going to do the cap right around the top. All right. Don't worry about any of these spots that look heavier than the others because we're going to give it another coat. That should help cover that up. Okay. Now let's let it dry. Okay, this is dry. I used a hair dryer, so it only took 5 or 10 minutes. Just make sure it is dry, because if it isn't, this is going to wipe right off. Okay, we've got our orange in here. All over my fingers. And I went ahead and put a magazine underneath here so you didn't hear the clunking. Now, if it's going to take longer than 30 minutes, I want you to wash your brush out. Okay, we're doing the same thing over again. I am actually working 2 different jars. So as you can see, I didn't put the finishing touch up here like I should have. But I'm going to correct that this time. A couple of thin coats of paint is much better than trying to put a thick coat of paint on. It covers better and it looks nicer. So don't try to rush this by putting a thick coat of paint on it. We want thin coats. Don't want to brush this on real hard either. I don't want to put scratches in it because this will scratch off very easily. Okay, this one is just about ready to go and dry again. Remember, hair dryer on the hot setting, point it at it, turn it carefully, keep it moving so the jar doesn't get too hot. I don't see any place else that needs it, so I'm going to put my jar up and pull my hand out. And I'm going to wash my brush. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, my second coat is dry here. And now I've got some red paint in my little pile. And I can't do this without teaching you something new. So we're going to do a new technique. It's called double loading our brush. I've got my brush here. I'm going to wipe it off just because I already did it once. But I want it to be a clean brush. Now it's clean. I'm going to dip it in the orange on one end. Then I'm going to dip it in the red just on one end. There. So I've got red and orange. Turn it over, I've got red and orange. I'm going to take and I'm going to pull it a couple of times and let it mix. Now when I pull it the other way, I haven't turned the brush. It's all still the same. It might be just a little bit too red, so I pulled it down a little bit. Now I'm going to take my jar and brush very carefully because the paint does not like to stick to this jar. So I'm going to brush lightly, and I'm going to start at the corner of this eye, or at the top of this eye. And just gently bring it down, and then bring it back up. Okay? Gonna have to dip it again. I want to make sure and dip the red in the red spot and the orange in the orange spot. So here's my red, and here's my orange. Now, do you remember what I called this? This is called double loading the brush. Why would I use it? Because I want to get two colors and I want them to blend by themselves. So I'm going to brush it out on my paper in the same spots it was in. Okay. Lay my brush down. The red is at the top. It's not going to work if you mix this up. And lightly brush it up and down. Okay. Sometimes we don't even have to reload. We can just brush in this spot that we've been double loading and do it again. Painters who paint in oil and who paint in watercolor and even acrylic paint will use this method. The important thing is when you go back and forth that you don't turn your brush over and you brush opposite. You still want to keep the red on the red side and the orange on the orange side. I think one more will do it. So I'm double loading my brush again. Remember, I want the red on the red side and the orange on the orange side. And I'm barely touching this jar. If I touch it too hard, I'm finding that the paint wants to come off because it really isn't quite dry. Okay, so now it looks like we've got stripes on our pumpkin. Now we're ready for the next step. Even though it's wet, we can do this. We're going to have to get this little piece of tape off. And it wants to stick. So very carefully work the edges up. And if your paint peels up a little bit, just push it back down. Okay, now we want to get the other one here. I am doing this so carefully because that paint wants to just come right off. But we're not going to let it. Carefully peel this tape off. I'm not going to pull it off like a Band-Aid. There we go. Now I've got to get the nose. You might need to take a pin and pull that one end up for yourself. I'm using my fingernails, but if you don't have fingernails, it's okay. You can use a little safety pin or a straight pin. There we go. We have two eyes and we have a nose. Now let's see if we have a mouth. You can tell this was the first one that I did because I put two bottom teeth on it too. Push that paint back down there. Okay, I've gotten everything off. Now I'm going to get some of that red and orange off of my brush. This is a damp paper towel and I'm just squeezing the brush in it. I'm going to put some yellow on my paint. If I can get the lid off. Got it. By the way, I'm using golden open acrylics today. I got these, I think, at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Okay, got a little bit of paint on here. I don't want a real heavy coat on the eyes. And I want to paint carefully inside my lines. Now, yellow is one of those colors that don't get it on your skin. Even if it's just a wash off, I can always tell when I've gotten yellow on my skin because it gives me a headache. So be careful that you don't get this all over your body. I am really rushing this project just because I've got everything set up and I don't want to have to put it away. If you don't rush your project and you really let this paint dry much better than I have let mine dry, it will work better. Okay, I've painted the nose and the eyes and the mouth. And I didn't give it a thick, heavy coat. And I'll tell you why. We are going to put on the inside a tea light. And I'm going to use battery-operated tea lights. And you're going to be able to see through the yellow more than you can see through the orange and the red. Okay, I've got that part done. Now I have a glue gun that I'm going to plug in and let it get nice and hot. And I'm going to glue the ribbon onto the top of my pumpkin. So we'll be right back. Okay, my glue gun is hot. I have a clothespin. I'm using that to tell the ribbon where I want it. And what I want to do, I think I want to start in the middle. So I want my bow to come off this side. This doesn't want to stay. There. So I'm dividing it in half because I know that half is going to be on one side and half the other. So I'm going to start by putting a little bit of glue right here at the top. Remember, this is hot glue. You probably need a parent or somebody around to watch you. Then I'm going to put this clothespin on it because that's hot. And it's going to wait a second until it gets cool enough. Then I'm going to move it around. And right about here, it's going to need some more glue. Okay. And then probably right about here, so I have enough to make a ribbon or a bow. Okay, I did one side of it. Now I'm going to come around and I'm going to do the other side. Just doing it one at a time. I'm not going to go up and over it. I'm just going to come up to it right there. There we go. Okay. Now I've got that to make a bow. Then, this is called raffia. It's just string, basically. And I'm going to take some underneath this ribbon. And you don't even need to do this. I just have this extra, so I might as well use it. I'm going to let some strings hang down, and I'm going to wrap it around. Put that in there. Wrap it around it a couple of times. See, my paint is still wet. I really want you to let this dry before you start messing around with it. Okay, I'm about to the end. So then I'm going to take and I'm going to tie it. Not in a bow. Just going to make a knot here. And this I am going to tie in a bow. Okay, as soon as this is dry, I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to spray it with acrylic finish. And hopefully it'll make it not want to come, the paint not want to scratch off so easily. So make sure that you get your finish on there. And I'll try to put a video up of me using the finish on it. But it's done. I'm going to wait till tonight. I'm going to put a little tea light in it, and let's see it light up. All right, we're going to spray Krylon Crystal Clear on this. And spray downwind, which means you don't want the wind blowing it back in your face. And the wind is blowing this way, so I'm going to spray it out here. There's going to be light coats. Light coats, 2 or 3 light coats. Okay, let it dry and do it again.